Hi guys, so Boris Johnson and Ian Blackford clashed during Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday. Now, I'm more and more convinced that Boris Johnson wants Scotland to leave the Union, wants Scotland to become an independent country, because he not just treats the SNP and Ian Blackford with contempt, but when Ian Blackford, for example, raises an issue that affects his constituents, Boris Johnson ignores the question. Now, that's not going to help the pro-union message or the pro-union cause by ignoring the questions that are raised by MPs in Parliament for Scotland. You know, you don't have to treat Ian Blackford with respect, but you should actually answer the question when it affects people in Scotland. Let's see how Ian Blackford raised his issue and how Boris Johnson responded.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent in Lochaber, a producer and exporter of shellfish, is experiencing his worst nightmare. After loading a lorry of fresh local seafood on Monday, as he's done for 35 years, his driver faced bureaucracy and delays. Brexit red tape now means that £40,000 of his fresh, high-quality produce is lost, unable to be sold. Mr. Speaker, that 40,000 produce is income for over 100 local families in many remote and fragile communities. Can the Prime Minister tell my constituent, where is the sea of opportunity that he and his Scottish Tories promised?
Okay, so I think it's quite simple. There is somebody who has there's the fishing communities. There is a business that employs 100 or supports 100 families. This business cannot operate because of this new Brexit red tape that Boris Johnson agreed. You know, the Brexiteers wanted this. So Boris Johnson has continually pushed the idea that these are new opportunities. The Tories in Scotland have promoted, you don't want to leave the Union, you want to leave the European Union because we're going to have all these great opportunities in the future. What opportunities? And also, how are you going to respond to these families in Scotland who aren't able to export anymore? Now, on Wednesday evening, there was a report that Scottish exporters won't be able to export until the 18th of January, meaning that they're still not going to be able to export for another almost a week.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're putting £100 million into supporting the fishing industry in Scotland and across the whole of the UK.
Okay, we're putting 100, but how does that fix the problem of bureaucracy, Boris? By saying these people can't export because there is bureaucracy. How are you fixing that? We're throwing money at it. But I've said this before. You don't fix bureaucratic problems by just throwing money at it. This is something that you have to take responsibility for. Now, Boris Johnson is not capable of taking responsibility for anything, including his children. He has to go to Brussels and he has to sort this out. That's what a Prime Minister should do. This is his fault. Those people who are trying to sell their produce in Europe cannot because of this guy and other Brexiteers who told them, don't worry, everything will be fine. Anyone who tells you there will be problems is engaging in Project Fear. Now, how is Brexit going to help these people? Not sometime in the future. How is it going to help them now?
And it is the policy of the Scottish Nationalist Party.
The Scottish Nationalist Party. Now, Boris pretends to, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Why does he? It's childish. This is childish behavior. Why is he acting like a child? You know, he should spend more time with his children instead of acting like a child.
Not just to break up the United Kingdom under their harebrained scheme, but also to take Scotland back into the EU and hand...
You're actually promoting independence here. Take Scotland... So imagine... Boris is saying, you know, you don't want to vote for the SNP because they'll take you back into the EU and perhaps even the single market where you'll be able to sell your fish again without restrictions. Is this an argument for rejoining the European Union? Is this an argument for Scottish independence? Which is it, Boris? You're saying the SNP want to take you out of the union where you can't sell your fish at the moment and take you into another union where you will be able to sell your fish without restrictions. This is, once again, Boris Johnson is probably one of the greatest advocates for Scottish independence. Boris Johnson is probably one of the greatest advocates at the moment for the Rejoin movement.
Back control of Scottish fisheries to Brussels, thereby throwing away all those opportunities.
The opportunity to not be able to sell your fish. That's the great, Boris Johnson has delivered you this great opportunity. What is the opportunity? You won't be able to sell your fish. I'm sorry, what? That's an opportunity. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. You didn't have it before, did you? You used to be able to sell your fish without any restrictions. Look at the opportunity I gave you. You won't be able to do it now. I'm sorry, that's an opportunity. Yeah. So you just have to look at it in detail. Don't look at it from, at a high level. You have to go into detail. Of course, Boris is not a details guy, but I'm looking at this and I'm trying to think, how is he not selling rejoining the European Union here? How is he not selling Scottish independence?
In a way that I think the right honourable gentleman himself opposite would say was totally absurd. And I'm amazed that he continues on this track.
It's absurd, the fact that we have left the European Union and this is a disaster. And it's an absurd that somebody would try to rejoin the European Union to fix the problem. But maybe not to fix this specific problem, but to fix a lot of problems.
Returning to Ian Blackford. Ian Blackford.
I'm amazed that the Prime Minister continues to traduce the name of the Scottish National Party. He's been told before and he really should get it right. And frankly, that answer was an insult to all fishermen that are facing loss today. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, that a third of the Scottish fishing fleet is tied up in harbour. Some boats are landing in Denmark rather than Scotland to avoid Brexit bureaucracy. Scottish seafood exporters are losing upwards of £1 million in sales a day. Seafood Scotland says all the extra red tape is an almost impossible task. It's even forced ferry operators to pause load deliveries to the continent. Mr. Speaker, the European Union have put in place a £5 billion fund to support businesses with the cost of Brexit. Last night, it was revealed that Ireland is receiving £1 billion of it. Can the Prime Minister tell Scottish business when they will be getting the same level of support, and where's the compensation for my constituent that's losing £40,000 today?
Boris, of course, will not answer this, but where is the compensation? Of course there's no compensation. The Tories don't give a crap about Scotland. They've never cared about Scotland. They used Scotland and the Scottish fishing industry as a tool to manipulate the public, to convince the public Brexit is going to be a success. They used fishing as an instrument to poison the minds of people. We need to focus on fishing. And isn't it ironic that fishing was the very last issue that was agreed between the European Union and the UK in Boris Johnson's Brexit deal? And this is the result. Scottish fishermen can't export. They have to delay. As he said, fishing boats are being diverted to other countries. The idea, once again, Boris Johnson, this is his responsibility. Now, he should take responsibility for this and go to Brussels and try and fix this bloody problem.
Mr. Speaker, he continually advocates the breakup of the union with the United
He never mentioned anything about the union here. He was talking about the fishing industry, the people he represents. Boris, see, this is what I'm talking about. He doesn't even listen to the question. Maybe he was like playing with his phone or something that we couldn't see on the screen. He was probably playing with his phone. Maybe chatting to someone. Maybe another lady. I don't know. But he was not listening to the question. Because he said, oh, SNP, they want to become independent, respond with, here is a list, break up union, yeah, talk about something else, talk about the NHS, talk about vaccines, don't answer the question, ignore the question. I really question myself, did Boris Johnson actually listen to the question? So one thing is listening and ignoring, another is just not listening at all. And how is this going to, if you're a member of the Conservative Party or a Conservative Party supporter in Scotland, and you're listening to this, never mind Ian Blackford for a moment, never mind the SNP, the question was raised, there are communities in Scotland, fishing communities, who are suffering at the moment. Now, that's not a political issue, that's the truth. They want to sell their produce into Europe, they can't because of this bureaucracy. Is there some sort of financial support for them? Now, you don't have to be an SNP supporter to answer that question. You don't have to be a lefty to answer that question. If you're a Conservative, you can answer that question. You can say, yes, they should be supported, or no, they should not. How is it okay for anyone in Scotland to justify Boris Johnson ignoring the question?
United Kingdom, and he continually advocates going back into the European Union, even though that would be immensely destructive to the...
Immensely destructive? Have you actually understood what's happening at the ports, Boris? He's explained it to you, and it's not just him. There are media reports about it too. Of course, Boris Johnson knows what's happening at the ports. He knows that these fishing communities are not able to sell their fish. He knows that there's this massive red tape now. Of course he knows about it. He's pretending not to know about it, which is worse. You know, if he stood up and said, look, we're going to fix it, it's not that big of a problem, we're hiring more people, then that would be, he'd be probably lying, but at least it would be a response. This is not a response. He's talking about something completely different here. Talking about breaking up the union. What's that got to do with the people who are suffering at the moment because they can't operate?
To the Scottish, immensely destructive to the Scottish economy, to jobs, to livelihoods, to pensions, to the currency. And as far as I understand it, they're already spending money in Scotland on IndyRef 2, what they call IndyRef 2, when they should be getting on, Scottish nationals should be getting on with fighting the pandemic.
Oh my God. How is this relevant to the question that was asked? There are fishing communities suffering at the moment. How are you going to help them? How are you going to compensate them? How are you going to fix this bureaucracy? And he's talking about IndyRef 2. He's talking about breaking up the union.
That, I think, is what the people of Scotland want to see. And he might pay tribute, by the way, to the merits of the United Kingdom in rolling out a vaccine across the whole of...
I think Boris Johnson has lost the plot. It's not just contempt at this stage. I think he's operating on a few fewer neurons. Really, it's either he's not functioning correctly, or he just has absolute contempt for the Scottish people. And I'm not just saying the SNP here, I'm talking about the Scottish people. Because we don't know. Ian Blackford raised the issue of an industry that is suffering at the moment. We don't know which way those the employees, the families that are supported by this industry are voted. They could have voted for the Conservative Party. I don't know. They could have voted for the SNP. They could have voted for Labour. They could have voted for the Green Party. We don't know how they voted. How they voted is irrelevant. Are you going to support them? Obviously not. Otherwise you would say we're going to support them in this way. Are you going to resolve this issue of paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape? No, because otherwise you would have said how you're going to deal with it. This is just going to rumble along for the next number of weeks until it gets to a stage where Boris Johnson will have to go to Brussels. He's hoping that he just lets it simmer and it will sort itself out. This is Boris Johnson to a T, in the same way as how he dealt with the pandemic. Let it rumble along until it gets to a stage where I have to deal with it. Where, the doors are being banged, being brought down, and, people are bashing the door in, basically, to get me to do something. At that stage, Boris Johnson will do something. So there's going to be a lot of disruption at the ports. A lot of people are going to suffer. Boris Johnson is going to sit on his friggin' arse. He's not going to do anything. And then when it gets to a stage where it's extremely uncomfortable for him to sit on his arse, then he will get up and he'll do something. Of course, that thing will be half-arsed as well, but he will have to do something at that stage. When that will arrive, I don't know. What that will be, I don't know. But for the time being, Boris Johnson is going to do sweet FA. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?